Welcome to another story made by Oracle 1. The heavy tapestries of white and crimson velvet lined the stone walls of the Queen's private chambers, muffling the sound of footsteps echoing down the corridor outside. It was the year 1588, a year of tensions, both subtle and fierce, in the court of Queen Elizabeth I. Among the bustling courtiers and whispered schemes, a young maid named Eliza moved like a shadow in the periphery, unnoticed yet observant. She had arrived at the palace from a modest village beyond the Thames, her purpose unremarked upon by many, but her mind was sharp enough to wield a weapon hidden beneath her quiet demeanor. Chess was her secret. In the grand hall, amid the delicate clatter of goblets and rustling silk dresses, the chessboard sat on a small oak table next to the window overlooking the gardens. Queen Elizabeth, renowned for her brilliant mind and strategic prowess, often played the game to pass the hours during her long solitary evenings. The Queen's favorite pastime had become a veil under which secrets and strategies flourished, and it was here that Eliza's true purpose found meaning. The court was rife with tension, not only from foreign threats like the looming Spanish Armada but within the walls, where factions whispered treachery, and loyalty was bought and sold in the stroke of a quill. The Queen's Protestant faith marked her enemies among the Catholic nobility, and those who dared oppose her rule faced a grim fate. Amid this precarious balance, Eliza found herself entwined with a man whose fortunes were as shadowed as her own. Thomas Radcliffe was a young nobleman known for his eloquence and his subtle rebellion against the oppressive hand of the crown. But to openly conspire was death. Secrecy was their only sanctuary. Eliza, with her lowly station, had access to corners of the court others envied, kitchens, servants' corridors, and sometimes the Queen's chambers when duty called. Thomas, having been banished from court yet still clinging to hope, awaited news, a lifeline beyond the grasp of his guards. Their alliance was born on a day when Eliza cleaned the chess pieces for the Queen and noticed the subtle inscription on the underside of the Black Knight, an emblem she recognized as part of the secret code whispered by rebels. The game started as a silent dance. Each pawn moved with precision, each bishop's leap across squares carrying coded directives, messages of warnings and hope. Eliza's fingers were nimble, sliding pieces across worn wood, her mind racing to encode the next message while the Queen's sharp gaze analyzed every move. That summer's day, as the sun filtered through stained glass casting kaleidoscopic patterns onto the floor, Eliza knelt before the chessboard. The Queen was engrossed in the game, her eyes glittering beneath arched brows. Eliza moved the White Queen forward a single square, sacrificing it with a measured calm. The move on its own was unorthodox for a game, but in their secret language, it meant urgent danger. Later, in the dimly lit kitchen, Eliza slipped a tiny wooden chess piece into the folds of a bread basket destined for a servant who carried messages to the outer court. Thomas found it cleverly concealed and, under the moonlight, deciphered the message embedded within the game's moves. The shifting positions of knights, bishops, and pawns painted a story of loyalists gathering against the Queen's hard lines, of plots fermenting under the guise of loyalty, and of a plan to smuggle Catholic texts to those banned from worship. The thrill of their covert communication was a fragile flame. Serpents coiled in every whispered word throughout the palace, and spies prowled, their ears prying for a slip of illicit politics. But chess was a sanctuary, a realm of infinite possibilities where a rebel's plea could pass disguised as strategy and a maid's touch could turn the tides of fate. Eliza's days blended chores with coded correspondence. She swept the hallways, knowing each corner could hide a listening agent. She cleaned the Queen's chessboard meticulously, each piece polished not only with care but as a token for messages to come. At times, she studied the Queen's mannerisms and expressions, connecting the mannered facade with glimpses of a monarch weighed by the burden of crown and kingdom. The queen herself was a master strategist, aware that power was most secure when held in shadows. While Eliza's intelligence and daring remained concealed behind her humble servitude, the young maid admired the queen's unwavering will. She saw Queen Elizabeth not as merely a sovereign but as a woman who held a realm tantalizingly at the edge of chaos and order. One evening, as autumn winds tore through the corridors and the scent of burning logs filled the air, Queen Elizabeth summoned Eliza unexpectedly. The maid approached with cautious reverence, heart pounding beneath the modest apron. The queen gestured toward the chessboard already set for a game, her voice calm but laden with gravity. "You have a keen eye for the game," Elizabeth said softly. "Tell me, what strategies would you employ if dangers lurked in plain sight? When do you sacrifice pieces for the greater good?" Eliza bowed her head, choosing words that danced between deference and subtle defiance. "Your Majesty, sometimes it is in the sacrifice of the smaller pawns, often forgotten, that the Queen's path is cleared. Without these sacrifices, no victory is truly earned." Elizabeth stared for a moment, then smiled faintly, as if recognizing a spark of kinship in the young maid. "Beware, Eliza. The game we play is far more perilous than mere kings and queens on a board. Do you understand?" "I do, Your Majesty," Eliza replied, though inwardly she was torn, her secret dangerous, yet the courage it demanded made her feel alive. The next few weeks brought heightening peril. The Spanish Armada's threat loomed ominously, while factions within England became more volatile. Eliza learned that the Queen's counselors whispered of traitors in their midst, men and women who sought to undermine the crown through letters and foreign alliances. The rebel cause, though noble in its intent to preserve religious sanctity, was fraught with risk. A secret meeting was arranged between Eliza and Thomas in the palace's secluded garden after dusk. The moon hung low among scattered clouds as the two met near a stone bench overgrown with ivy. Thomas, his face pale but resolute, presented a worn parchment hidden between the leaves of his coat. "This," he whispered, "is the proof we need, confirmation that some among the council conspire with Spain." Eliza's eyes widened. "How can we use it wisely? To expose them, but not endanger innocents?" Thomas nodded thoughtfully. "We must send this to the Queen, but discreetly. If the wrong eyes see it, we perish both." The plan grew intricate. Eliza knew the chessboard could be their vessel once more. The coded moves would carry directions to a hidden location where the document was secreted, and in turn signal the Queen's loyal guards to act. That night, Eliza entered the Queen's chamber alone, the air thick with lavender and beeswax. Elizabeth was reading by candlelight, her sharp eyes lifting as the maid approached. Eliza set the chess pieces in an unlikely pattern, an opening sequence seldom used, then left without a word. The message was sent. The following days were tense storms of uncertainty. Shadows moved furtively, alliances fractured under the weight of suspicion, and yet the Queen's gaze was steady, fortified by the knowledge clawed from those whispered moves of Eliza's chessboard. At last, the conspirators were unmasked, their plots thwarted by the silent language of the game and the bravery of a maid few had noticed but many owed. Elizabeth summoned Eliza once more, this time with genuine warmth shining through her glacial demeanor. "You saved your queen," she said. "Sometimes, the greatest power lies in those who seem smallest. You, Eliza, have proved that the true Game of Thrones is played not just with crowns and swords, but with courage and cunning." Eliza's heart swelled, knowing that beneath the gleaming jewels and silks, power was a shared, fragile trust. The chessboard remained in the Queen's chambers, a symbol of a silent rebellion that had changed the course of history, one coded move at a time. And so, amid the then whispered threats of war and rebellion, the Queen's court found new balance. The maid and the rebel continued their silent communication through the language of chess, an eternal gambit played in shadows, for the kingdom and for the uncertain hope of peace. For more stories, like and subscribe.